Going on, everybody? As you can see, we're in the studio and I'm sitting here with my buddy Sam. And what are we here for today?
We're talking about measuring houses, sir. Why we measure them, the process we have to go through, and why it's really important to get it right.
Boom, you heard it straight from the professional's mouth. Let's get straight into the video. Welcome back, everybody. Like we just talked about, it's all about measurements and appraisals with the pro himself, Sam. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about, what is the difference between an appraisal and a measurement?
Well, Jeremy, I'm glad you asked. A home is naturally measured as part of the appraisal process. We have to measure homes in order to find out its accurate size. But when we're doing measurements specifically for a realtor or an architect, it's just that. We're just getting the square footage just to produce a report for the agent to use for their marketing or the homeowner to use for themselves for like a renovation or an expansion, which is what an architect may also use it for.
Nice. So that's just the measurements, right?
That's just measuring.
So what makes an appraisal different?
Oh, there's a valuation component with an appraisal. It's not, the home is measured as part of the valuation process, generally done for lending purposes.
All right. So it's more, the appraisal is more about finding out the money involved, and the measurements more like just the actual square footage and layout of the property itself.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Boom. That sounds easy to remember. All right, everybody, I have to glitch in here real quick to tell you two things about the video. Number one, the lighting. As soon as this is over, you're going to notice the lighting change a little bit, and that's because I accidentally left the house lights on in the studio when we were filming, so for the rest of the video, I remembered to turn them off. The second thing you're going to notice is that it's going to sound like Sam just kind of comes up in the middle of a point right here, and that's because he kind of did. Once again, my fault completely. Forgot to press that record button on the camera, and we've recorded about half of the episode. So we go back over everything that we talked about, and don't worry, you haven't missed anything yet. All right, let's jump right back in.
So at that point, we would go inside the property and gather more data on the first floor. We measure front to back, side to side, make sure we get into all the nooks and crannies of the property in order to come up with the accurate square footage. Once the first floor is, all the data is gathered, we square the property. We could show you later in an example. And then we go upstairs and start measuring the second floor.
Nice, that makes sense. So you kind of start at the beginning and work your way around so you can get like an accurate dimension and layout.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We begin with the outside of the property and move on to the inside and make sure we get all the measurements for the first floor before we go anywhere else. Everything rides off the first floor. So that's very important.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, you got to start at the base and work your way up from that, because it would probably be impossible to have a second floor much larger than a first floor unless it was obvious from the outside, as you just mentioned, the way you notice how they stack on top of each other.
Exactly. It's very important to observe how the second floor sits on top of the first floor. So, and make sure you get those notes very clearly on there.
So, just on that topic matter, let's talk about maybe some things that agents would probably think are included in square footage, but actually are not according to the guidelines.
Ah, that's a really good question, Jeremy. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission has very specific guidelines on this. So when we're measuring homes, we need to stop measuring at a 5-foot knee wall. Whenever the ceilings come down like this, if you've ever seen them in a bonus room, we need to stop measuring at a 5-foot knee wall. And also, over 50% of the ceiling height has to be above 7 feet. If it's below 7 feet, it cannot be included in the heated and cooled square footage of the property.
Man, that's crazy. I wouldn't have thought that. I would have assumed just because it was like drywalled in or ready to go in living space, that's what consisted of living space. But I guess there's just stipulations on how tall the ceiling has to be as well.
Yeah, there are stipulations on that as well. The interesting thing, a lot of folks think that in order for a bedroom to be considered a bedroom, that you actually have to have a closet. And that's not. North Carolina Real Estate Commission says that is not the case. You don't have to have a closet in order for a bedroom to be considered a bedroom.
Oh man, is that specific just to North Carolina? Do you happen to know?
That's a good question. I do not know.
That's all right. You don't have to know. That's a random question I just threw your way.
In New York, it probably anything's a bedroom. A closet, a broom closet could be called a bedroom.
Accurate. I've seen some pretty tiny ones, that's for sure.
But in North Carolina, you do not have to have a closet in the room for it to be called a bedroom.
Man, that's kind of cool. So how do you handle like a situation where there's a giant living space and there's like the upstairs space that can view down into it with the railing? How does that factor in when you're doing something like living space, when you're factoring out all your measurements?
We would treat that similar to what happens below a 5-foot knee wall. An appraiser could measure to to the outside of that wall and then include that space and then specifically extract it out. Me personally, I just, as I'm drawing the floor plan, I literally go around it. And I never include it to extract it. One can make mistakes if you include the entire second floor and then extract out those areas. I personally go directly to the perimeter wall and stay on track that way. I find it to be more accurate.
Nice. That's a good tip. Nice way of operating. The more accurate you can be, obviously, is always the better. Accuracy is key because these numbers matter, especially in today's market. Everyone's talking about the actual square footage of the property. And so coming up with these numbers correctly and accurately the very first time is super important.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Got to get your homes measured. And if you don't know how to do it, hire a professional.
There's a good point. Hire a professional. That's what I always tell people. So why would you recommend maybe hiring a company like the one you work for versus, just an agent measuring the house themselves with a tape measure?
That's a good question. So last year I measured personally over 1,350 homes. And so the vast experience of that is just immense. Yeah, I see 5 to 6 homes daily. And the average agent does not measure that many homes daily.
Let's talk about that. 1,350 homes just last year alone. And how long have you been doing appraisals and measurements? I don't think we've covered that yet.
No, not yet. I began very young. I've been doing this for 16 years. So,
man, 16 years he's been doing math, straight math the whole time. That means you started on pen and paper, and now you've definitely upgraded to a more digital platform. He actually runs the company Your Solution. And that's where I basically send any type of floor plan or measurements or anything like that I have to do. So do you want to talk any about maybe your company and how you handle work?
Sure, a bit. Yeah, Your Solution is a staffing company, and we provide services for architects, appraisal companies. We fuel them. We take the measurements they produce on the field, and then we turn that into the measurements that they give to their agents. So if you're a creator that takes measurements by hand, we can take over the floor plan creation process for you.
So now let me ask you this question, because as you know, I may be a photographic and video artist, but when it comes to actual art, I am atrocious. Even that comes to lines. So do I have to present some sort of like artistically representational drawing to you, or can it just be the chicken scratch that I can only provide?
No, that's funny. No, you'd be surprised at some of the stuff that we've seen. Chicken scratch is probably, it'll work.
All right, that's good to know.
As long as your drawing is accurate, guys. I can't stress that enough. Jeremy mentioned the point about being professional earlier, and you have to really know what you're doing when you're powering agents and telling them how big the property is. You better use the right tools and use the right techniques and treat them right and create a good product.
All right, so we've talked about a bunch of things so far, but let's go into kind of like the tools of the trade, because I've seen agents use old school tape measures. I've seen them use fancy new laser measuring devices, and I've seen people kind of use like 3D Matterport cameras in particular. So which one of those do you recommend, if any, and why?
You can use whatever tool you feel comfortable with. Here's my stash. I use an old school Leica laser. This is the Disto X310. It's been around the world with me. Just a plain old Casio. And this is actually my favorite tool. I just got this. This is the Books by Onyx Note Air. And turn it on, and it is actually right on my last drawing.
Oh man, that's a nice screen. So, I like that.
Yeah, it's I use this thing purely for measuring homes. And this is, we could zoom into this and show you. But I use this just for, as this is like my paper, actually. I've replaced my paper. I take it all digital now, and some people have made an argument that it's really no different than paper, but I beg to differ because I can actually shrink the drawing at any time. I can add to it. I can measure a very, very large house, and I can erase very, very easily and just keep everything to scale. This is actually a really nice tool.
So you can like zoom in and out on it, so it makes it a much more useful tool than paper, especially as you age and require those old man glasses like I have a pair of inside.
Absolutely, and the best thing about this is it doesn't get wet. You could rain on it. And it
that's cool. So it's water resistant as well.
Yep.
Man, that's a pretty cool tool. So basically you're saying that it doesn't matter what tool you use as long as you use the tool correctly?
As long as you use the tool correctly, that's for dang sure.
There we go. That's it right there. That's basically it. What else do you want? I mean, I don't know what else to tell y'all. This was a simple introduction video to basically just measurements and appraisals, the difference between the two, what you should kind of be looking for when you look for someone who's doing measurements, especially if you're an agent trying to outsource the work. So I guess that's something we didn't really talk about. But why would an agent, I guess, like hire a company like yours instead of just measuring the house themselves?
I actually genuinely believe that every agent should measure their houses themselves. At least they should know how to do it. The reason you hire a professional like us or another outfit is that we just measure more homes. So we just have more experience. We can do it faster, more accurate, and because we just measure more homes, just like you're professionals at selling homes, and we may sell them once in a while, but we're certainly not pros at it. But you should know how to measure your own homes. I think every agent should know how to measure their own homes.
So I have a weird random kind of question for you, I guess, and this would kind of go more towards customer service aspect, if anything. But like, do you ever have issues where there's a discrepancy of square footage with an agent, and how do you go about, I guess, showing them why your way is correct?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. So the North Carolina Real Estate Commission allows a variance of 5% between different measurement sources. So let's say a house was 1,000 square feet and I measured 5% higher than that or 5% lower than that. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission would consider both people to be, within the average range. 5% is quite a lot. And so on 3,000 square feet, that's 150 square feet. And especially in today's market, every foot counts. So we consider 3% variance to be pretty substantial. If there is a variance and if there is an issue, then the agents simply submit whatever their files may be, if they have an old appraisal, whatever there is raising the question. And we'll look at it, consider the differences between the two. And then if we need to, go back to the property and double check for sure.
Man, that's a really good way of putting it. And the reason I bring up that question in particular is because, it's probably not the agent you're going to have to be convincing about the square footage. It's probably going to be the homeowner. So that's another reason why I personally believe it makes more sense to hire a professional, because then you have someone who can come in and professionally explain to the homeowner why you may have gotten this number before. Someone may have actually presented you this number, but it is incorrect, and these are the reasons why. And that way it's not all left up to the agent. The agent can say it and they have a professional to back them up. So it's kind of like the two-party system, like, hey, not only am I correct, but I also have you to verify my correction.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought this up, actually. I think it was Wednesday. I'm losing track of my days, but I think it was on Wednesday that I had a home. It was yesterday. Yeah, the woman was a surgeon, and she loved surgery. She couldn't wait to get back at it. She was a person that was genuinely meant for surgery. But anyway, so there was a discrepancy. I hate using someone else's work. I prefer doing my own thing from scratch. It seems like every time I use someone else's work, there's something that leads me astray. Let's put it that way. And so in this case, I had a difference of 1 foot. It was driving me insane. I couldn't figure it out. And so I knew my measurements were accurate, but I had drawn it off the other sketch. I have it in here actually, but I'd drawn it off the other sketch, and there was they hadn't recognized that there was a 1 foot difference in the front of the house, and I hadn't paid attention because I thought it was flat as well. It looked flat from the front. It was misleading, but there was a 1 foot difference, and so my left side caught it, and then I kept looking at his sketch, their sketch, forgive me, and so. I found a difference and was able to clearly show the owner exactly where it was with her own eyes using this tool. So,
did you hear what he just said there? He said that there was a 1 foot discrepancy and it was personally driving him crazy because it's his job to figure this out. This just goes in one more time to lead to why you should hire a professional, because a literal 1 foot discrepancy drove him nuts, but then he figured it out and was able to explain it to a homeowner in a way that made sense. And I'm sure the agent definitely appreciated that.
In this case with the homeowner, and she asked if it was 1 foot for her or against her, and it was actually for her, and they'd already sold the house. So she was like, I guess I could have gotten more money for my house if I'd had the extra square feet. So
That's funny. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. All right. Well, I think that's really kind of like about it for this video, unless there's anything else in particular. Oh, you know what? There is one more thing I want to bring up that
my
I
gosh.
literally just popped in my mind.
of course, there's one more thing.
Of course. And only because I've heard you mention this before to me. And doesn't North Carolina have some weird law where you have to like measure the thickness of the walls, of the exterior walls?
That's so you may be misunderstanding that when we measure single family residential homes and townhomes, some of them fall into this description. We measure to the outside of the property. We have to measure physically to the outside of the property, and so we do have to include the thickness of the walls. But if we're measuring a condo, condos are measured from the inside and they're measured paint to paint, and we do not include the thickness of the walls in condos. But the thickness of the walls could vary depending on the building materials. So
Man, I'm glad I asked that question because I just learned something. I had no clue. I just heard you mention it kind of roughly in the past. Well, I think that's about it for our kind of like basis and introduction into the whole measuring and appraisals. If you're new to it all and if you just had questions about it, I think that covered a lot of them. This is just the first in a multi-part series. My next video is going to be really more towards the content creator side. We're going to talk to Sam in depth about the gear that he uses and the techniques that he uses. We'll go over a few little video clips of him actually producing floor plans and his company producing these beautiful floor plans that really look great to clients. I've gotten so many compliments from them. But either way, as I always say, keep rock and rolling, keep shooting, having fun, all that jazz. Peace out. Boom, boom.